I don't like this game. JumpStart 3rd grade is a game I played as a kid and I did not understand it. I didn't understand it back then and I don't understand it now. So let's talk about why it's not very good. As soon as you start this game, you're greeted with a sign-in screen just like any other learning game. However, once you sign in, this disembodied voice starts talking.
Please enter and have a seat. Sit up straight, no slouching in this classroom. Is that gum in your mouth? Sorry, my mistake.
I have no idea who this is because they're never heard from anywhere else in the game again, so your guess is as good as mine. After signing in, this happens. Where did the robot come from and why not just use the door like everyone else? It begs for an explanation. Anyway, the robot, Android XL2, known as Bali, is one of the most annoying characters you'll ever meet and you'll see why soon. So he explains the plot. Basically, the game takes place in the so-called Mystery Mountain run by Professor Sparks, who looks like the brother of Dr. Insano. So he leaves to go to a convention one day and places Bali in charge of his 8 or 9-year-old daughter, Polly, a self-centered, supposed genius troublemaker. She comes home from school fuming because she gets a 0 on a test about inventors. So she sends 25 robots back in time to change history to match those answers, using her father's time machine. She wants to do this because she wants to take over the mountain.
Of course!
Of course, she said herself that they were the wrong answers to begin with, so why she's upset is beyond me.
When I was at school, the teacher handed us a surprise quiz. I already knew all the answers, and she knew I knew them. So, just to have some fun, I made up my own answers to that dumb old quiz.
I question where Botley was during all this because during the flashback it shows the robots marching into the time machine, and he's not stopping this in any way. It's not like Polly disabled him, all he had to do was unplug the time machine, or better yet, destroy it. But finding logic in the story is pointless, as you'll see. So it's your job to get the 25 robots back. To do this, you first have to select the question from the test. Once you do that, you have to collect the 4 clues that Polly has scattered around the mountain. She covered her tracks so well.
I covered my tracks by hiding clues all over the mountain.
Not only do you have to retrieve the clues, but you have to have 1,000 invention points as well. Do that and you can enter the time machine. But you're not going to know which time period to go to. That's where the clues come in handy, as you'll see. To collect the clues and accumulate points, you have to play the various games across the mountain. If you're wondering which games to play, you're in luck because it just so happens that Bali has a sensor that detects clues. Why a robot would ever need that is beyond me. As you might have guessed, one of the first problems of this game is Bali. First of all, he talks like he has a cold or something.
The transquizzer. Now be careful with that thing. Don't drop it. The future of the world may depend on that little machine in your hands.
It's as bad, if not worse, than Mega Man from Captain N.
They wouldn't treat me like this if I was human like them.
This is great. How are we gonna get into the mountain?
Or I'll mega blast you.
Polly, you know I've been programmed to clean up your messes.
Secondly, he's not the most truthful robot around. At the beginning of the game, he tells you that he wasn't programmed to fly, but 2 seconds later, he flies.
If Professor Sparks had meant for me to fly, he'd have given me wings.
Third, and biggest of all, he's never quiet. Like, ever. He talks all the time.
Bingo! I've sensed a mission clue in the kitchen. There's also a mission clue in the professor's virtual collection. That's in the art gallery. You got the first lock. 2 more to go. Good job. You opened the lock. All sensors indicate that Polly hid a mission clue in the shrinking machine room. I'm getting a strong clue reading in the observatory.
You'll grow tired of it fast. The game's biggest problem is its repetitiveness. For every question, you need to collect 4 clues. That's 20 clues total per 5 questions, making 100 clues. Not only do you need the clues, you also need enough points to enter the time machine. On top of all that, you have to worry about how much energy you have left. If you run out of energy, you can't do anything until you recharge. And there's only 3 levels to this mountain, so you'll be playing the same games 100 plus times. It gets boring, fast. And the games aren't exactly fun, so let's briefly talk about them. Before entering the mountain, we have to unlock the door, and the alarm combination is Simon, literally. This has got to be one of the dumbest alarm systems in the world, for reasons that I don't need to explain. The first floor has 3 rooms, the painting hall, the kitchen, and the music hall. In the painting hall there are 2 activities. The first is an art gallery where Polly will tell you that she wants a picture of something and you have to paint it. Your first instinct is to paint the picture yourself because you're given all the usual painting tools, but that's not the case because the game doesn't recognize it.
Polly, how's that?
Hey, that doesn't look like the woods to me. Get it right.
The only way to do it is to insert a pre-made background and pre-made objects. This activity is entirely pointless because you can't be creative at all, which defeats the purpose of an empty canvas. And I don't think it's educational because you're just following orders. If the game taught you different painting techniques, then that would be passable. If you want to just paint, paint is a better option and it already comes on Windows. The second activity is the virtual painting gallery, where Polly will give you a hint about a painting and you have to select the proper painting based on the hint. How do you know which one is the right one? Marge here will give you a brief description of the painting and you have to match the description with the hint.
This Native American totem pole has symbolic meaning. Can you crack the code?
Select the right painting and you're given a matching puzzle to solve. This is one of the only activities in the game that's actually educational because it teaches you something about art history. Though if you wanted a puzzle game, there are plenty of better options. The second activity is the kitchen, but before you can get into the kitchen, you have to unlock the door by solving math problems. Do that and you can go inside. The objective of the kitchen is to feed this robot named Mort wherever he wants by playing Purbo Place. On the top of the screen you'll see a bunch of measuring instruments, and on the bottom of the screen you'll see a bunch of ingredients. Use the instruments to measure the ingredients appropriately and get the clue. It turns out that the robots are cannibals because some of the dishes have metal in them. The last activity on this floor is the music hall, but once again it's locked. To solve it, you need to unscramble the words. In case you're wondering what that robot head is, it's a robot named Beethoven. Har har. The goal of the music room is to rearrange the music in the correct order. Another pointless room because it doesn't teach you any music. If the game taught you basic music theory, that would be infinitely better. The rooms with locks always get locked once you leave, so you have to repeat the process. I'd like to point out that while you're doing these activities, your energy starts to run out. If you're wondering exactly what energy is running out, I'm just as confused as you are. To recharge, you have to head to the basement generator room where you have to power rings. To power these rings, you are given a bunch of numbers and you have to make 2 numbers add up to the corresponding number. On to the second floor. This floor has 2 activities, the shrinking machine room and the biosphere. In the shrinking machine room, Polly will give you a hint about a specimen and you have to select the proper specimen based on the hint to find the clue. On the left of the screen you'll see all the specimens. To find the proper specimen, you are given a scanner that gives you a description of each specimen when you click on it. Usually the hint that Polly gives you will be in the description of the specimen itself, you just have to find it. Once you think you have the proper specimen, you put it on the shrinking machine and Polly shrinks down to size. Now you expect him just to find the clue, but no. You have to play Breakout. Aside from the obvious question of what the heck Breakout is doing in this type of game, it's really boring. It's Breakout like normal, but the speed never changes and there's no power-ups to speed things up. You have to hit all the blocks to find the one that holds the clue. The block always changes, so you'll never know which block it is. If it's the wrong specimen, you have to repeat the process again until you select the correct one. You can imagine the frustration and the tediousness of this game. Imagine an 8 or 9-year-old trying to play this game and then having to redo it again every time they pick a wrong one. Why can't you have just taken the specimen and then Bali searches for it himself and tells you whether it's in there or not? The game gets old real fast and it's probably the worst activity of the bunch. The next activity on this floor is the biosphere. In this activity you control a ship as you pass through airlocks while collecting health. To pass through the airlocks you have to answer a question that Polly asks. Since the game tells you nothing, you'll have to use trial and error to get the correct answer. unless you have an encyclopedia on hand. Granted, there are some clues in the question, but unless it's obvious, you're most likely not going to get it right on the first try. Once you've unlocked all the airlocks, the ship will surface, and using the answers you have collected, you'll have to guess which environment the clue will be in. The ship can send probes, which will give you more hints.
Osteometer reading. This animal has bones that are hollow. They have to be light so that the animal can fly. This is a bird.
Land on the proper pad and collect the clue. The controls feel a bit loose though, because you control the ship with the arrow keys, but it seems to go wherever it wants. When landing the ship on the landing pad, you have to be in the center of the landing pad. If not, it doesn't count and you'll lose health. As long as I land on the pad, it shouldn't matter whether it's in the center or not. The third and final floor also has only 2 games, Robot Maze and the Observatory. In the Robot Maze, you have to direct a robot to the goal using a selection of moves. This looks more like a puzzle in a Professor Layton game rather than an educational game. There's almost nothing educational about this game, and there are far better puzzle games on other platforms. Lastly, there's the Observatory. This activity has 3 parts to it. In the first part, you have to intercept 4 radio packets that have been shot into the black hole. Then you have to unscramble a sentence. Once you did that, you have to pick the proper constellations from the globe that corresponds to the sentence. Sometimes it's obvious, but imagine having to go through each constellation, listen to the clue, and then decide if it's the right one. It's very tedious. If you want to learn about the constellations, you're better off getting an illustrated book about this topic from the library. Once you have all of the clues and collected the required 1000 invention points, it's off to the time machine. To actually use the time machine, first you have to play a quiz show hosted by a very creepy talking bowtie.
Pigs are the only animals besides humans whose skin can get what painful condition? You're right! Hey! Pigs get sunburns just like people. Sunburns are caused by overexposure to the...
The questions are based on the clues you find and will tell you where and who and time you're searching for. Another pointless activity because it's just trial and error to get the correct answer. Then you can proceed to retrieve the robot. Do that 25 times and you beat the game. The main problem with this game is that it's repetitive beyond belief. Educational games by nature are repetitive, but this game takes it to a whole new level. As far as the educational value of this game goes, it will educate you, but it's stuff you can easily find yourself at a library for free. Most of the games are watered down versions of better games that you could probably find cheaper elsewhere. On top of all that, you have Bali to deal with. On that quote-unquote merit alone, I couldn't recommend this game to anyone. If you're curious, look it up on YouTube, but otherwise skip it as there are far better educational games out there and there are far better puzzle games out there.